Hello, everyone. Quick technical check-in. Can somebody confirm that you can hear me in the chat, please? Perfect. All right. Well, then, thank you very much for joining the session where we're going to talk about how to retouch product images 90% faster with AutoRetouch. And I already stated it in the chat that the way we're going to run this session is that I'm not a big friend of slideshows, so instead we'll actually do an entire session around demonstrating how you can use AutoRetouch in order to speed up your retouching process significantly. To give you a bit of background around me, my name is Julian. I am the Chief Revenue Officer at AutoRetouch, and I look after everything that pertains our customers, our partners, and our overall go-to-market. I started my career about 12 years ago at Adobe, and now I'm coming full circle and actually I'm entering the end-to-end image editing space myself, together with my co-founders at AutoRetouch. The idea behind AutoRetouch actually came about 2 years ago when a big bit of an inflection point happened where there was now enough processing power available in the cloud in order to do image editing at a certain scale. And at the same time, computer vision algorithms became good enough in order to start building upon them to create a use case like you'll see in AutoRetouch. Now, in order to show you what AutoRetouch can do, it's important that we look at the problem that it solves first. And that problem is relatively straightforward. When a company decides to create new product images, whether it's for their brand or for when a retailer does it, in the fashion world, this happens every year and it almost happens every day because the fashion world is so diverse. You have seasons and you have the collections that change very heavily, and so you have a naturally recurring stream of images that need to be retouched, because when they come out of the studio, they look something like this, where you have this young gentleman standing in a studio environment, or it looks like this, where you have this young gentleman with the beautiful complexion on his skin, but that is not necessarily how a product image is known to look when you go through it in an online store. And so what we've set out to do is to make it super easy, super fast, and super scalable to turn these kinds of images into the perfect looking images that you're known from an online store, and do it in a very convenient fashion. So without further ado, we'll jump into how that actually works. So AutoRetouch is an online tool, and the way you use it is, as you are well known now, by creating an account first and foremost, and then you're ready to go. When you first create an account, notice that you get €1 in credits for us for free. That equates to 10 images that you can process fully end-to-end with our workflows. That also gives you a hint at the price point of the image that we charge here, which is 10 cents per image. And that's the basic version and everything you will need to know in terms of pricing. You may have, when you look at our website, seen our pricing page. It's one that we're quite proud of. So I'll take this as a quick aside, but we actually said we would make our pricing napkin calculation friendly, and we meant that quite literally. So it really only costs you 10 cents to process an image in AutoRetouch, and that's it. So when you have uploaded credits in your system, or you just created an account in order to try it, you're now then presented with this overview screen. And as you can see, here are quite a lot of workflows that I've created over time. And the workflow is also how AutoRetouch actually processes your image. They always have the same structure. You have input images, you have output images, and in between, you define a sequence of events that will manipulate the image in a way that you need it. And so, for example, if we take this young gentleman right here first and foremost, in order to show how we could turn him or similar images like this one into a set of freshly developed e-commerce ready product images, you would create a workflow as I will show you now. The first step in this case that we need to have done is to remove the background. Right. So in this case, we have trained our machine learning models in order to understand what is the human part in this image, what is the clothing part in this image. And if you select the clothing and model, then this is what the machine will produce for you. The background is entirely removed, and now you can work with just the figure. Now, let's say in this example, we also wanted to add shadows under the feet of the model, because you want to avoid that the human model is floating in space later on in the finished product image. You would do it by dragging this component into the workflow, deciding on the size of the workflow and a few other settings, and then you're done there as well. Next, you would decide the canvas on which the figure is supposed to be put going forward. Now, in this case, you see we have a padding in here where the face is now not exactly at the edge anymore. We can just remove that by putting it like this. We can decide on the size of the output canvas. We can change the alignment in the image by moving the figure to the left or to the right. That's all up to your gusto and how your online store ultimately will need to look like. And you can change the background color in here if we wanted to go something like this, or even upload your own images. And then last but not least, what you would always do is you would decide on how to export this new image. And you can choose between 3 file types. The PNG or JPEG versions give you basically fully finished images, but you also have the option to select the Psd option here. And Psd is the native file format that Photoshop uses. And when this option is selected, you're actually getting a fully fledged Photoshop file, where every step that AutoRetouch does on your image automatically creates a new layer in the file, and the background removal even creates a layer mask, which allows you to do further editing later on in Photoshop very easily. And so now let's say this is a kind of workflow that I want to leverage going forward. I'm going to give this a name and call it the AXCD workflow. We'll save it. And then we go into the run workflow mode where the real magic happens. While you're in here, you are not being charged against your credit balance, because this is where you actually are able to validate whether a workflow produces good results for you. So here you have this preview window where you can have a zoomed in version of the preview image. You can also download the image in a preview and take a look at what the output would look like. And as you can see, we do have everything that we wanted and specified in the workflow being applied here. And now the next step is to go to batch processing. And the batch processing is where the contextual intelligence that we've programmed into our components really shines, because now you don't have to process every single image one by one. You can actually say, all right, I want to have this entire folder of 23 items uploaded and processed with the same workflow, because all of these images were shot within the same batch of images, for example, in the photo studio, and they are similar in style. So what happens now is that as they're being uploaded to AutoRetouch, they're being processed one by one. It usually takes about 15 to 45 seconds per image once it's been uploaded in order to fully process. And then once the images are finished, you are able to just download them here when the action button for the download shows up in a few seconds. Now, a few things to mention here, because this is an important concept to understand. The idea is to genuinely take a lot of heavy lifting out of the process of retouching. So with these components in this particular workflow, I'm not just doing one step at a time, but I apply multiple steps to multiple images at the same time. And that's where the significant cost and time savings comes from using our service. It's really the contextual intelligence that's in here that does the processing for you, that allows you to get these results. And the first few images are already finished. So now one by one, they will finish, and then they will be available for me to download. So let's take one or two as examples, right? We have here another one, a young gentleman with the same settings. And we have here another one. Oh no, that's the same guy. Let's take a different one right here, where we have the same settings applied. And now from here, this is probably what we would call the standard fashion workflow. There is one component that I haven't used here because I wanted to show its effect directly, that is also very often used in product image editing for fashion, and that is the skin retouch. So when we create a new workflow, this time we'll call it AXCD skin. I showed you the young gentleman earlier on with the complex skin on his back. So for this to be an image that can be used in an online store, his complexion needs to change. And for that, we've created a component that does just that. Now, in just the same way that our remove background component understands what a human is and what clothing is in the picture and what is background, our skin retouch component, what is human skin in the picture. So it will only apply its magic on the actual skin area in the picture. And at the moment, we support 2 use cases with it. We have a mole removal that will move all of the moles that the young gentleman has on his back here. And we have an airbrushing option that will smoothen his skin compared to what you saw earlier. And as you can see in the preview, the complexion is very smooth now, and all of the moles that used to be there, let's see if I can get the original image up as a comparison, is gone, right? And that's also something that takes up a lot of time if you want to do this manually in Photoshop, and especially when you think about more complex scenarios where it's not just a back, but where there are lips in the picture and other skin-related areas of the human body, it becomes more and more important that the system is able to discern what is skin and what is not. Now, we'll also do a quick workflow demonstration here with another image so that you can see what I mean when I said that it's important for the system to understand, for example, what is lips and what is just skin in an area. So we'll run this workflow the same way that we used to run the one that I showed earlier. In this case, we're going into the body shot section. We'll use the shot that we just had, and we will use this shot to illustrate the point. Now, again, the same structure applies. You're uploading the image in the run workflow mode. As soon as it's uploaded, the processing starts, and you're being charged against your credit balance, the 10 cents that I mentioned earlier. And as these 2 files now process and are being processed by the algorithms, I'm going to share a little bit more about the Psd export that I mentioned earlier. And for that, we'll look at a Psd file that the system created. Now, this is from a recent demonstration, and ultimately what you want with the Psd export options is to give your internal or your external service providers that work on these product images day by day an ability to use AutoRetouch as a pre-processing layer. So an AI will never be able to do real creative work, in the sense that a human eye is able to discern a lot more detail than an AI ever will, especially when it comes to subjective things like, I want this hair showing, and I want that pimple removed, and I want that mole still available, etc. So in order to allow teams to use our software to do the heavy lifting, but still maintain creative control, we are offering this Psd export option in order to make that very easy. So as you can see in the file, the team gets both the original input image. They get a layer mask for the cutout. So this is where how the system really sees what it actually cuts out, and you're able to refine further. And as you can see, there are some very detailed areas in here, like this small piece in here and in the hair area, that are already very complex, but you are still able to refine further if you wanted to. And you're able to do the same thing to just select the skin retouch area. For example, you're just able to select the shadows under the feet and set on canvas. And by doing this, you're able to continue working on these files even if you had the option to just have it fully end-to-end processed with AutoRetouch already. Now, moving into the two files that I just showed you, we'll download them real quick in order to show the skin retouch in this image in particular. Now, the original image here, just a comparison, looks like this. So as you can see, this young lady does have quite a complex skin as well. It has moles up in the face, and it has moles up on in their arm. And the system only applied the mole removal on the skin area and this airbrushing as well. So the lips have not been airbrushed. The skin has not, there has not been anything else removed. But even here in the shadowy area that her skin, that her chin produces, the mole was recognized and it was removed. So again, in order to have a ground level ability to retouch skin, AutoRetouch offers a very powerful and cost-effective option to do that. Now, another use case that in the fashion industry is very prevalent is ghost mannequin, or removing clothing from a mannequin on which it's been placed or shot on. So let's do an example here as well. This is the original shot, and what we are able to do for you is to use both this shot and what is called an inlay shot, and basically give you these two images pre-processed so that you only have, so that you can very easily merge them later on in Photoshop yourself. Now, in this case, it's important to select only the select clothing option here in the remove background component, because we've trained this model in particular in order to just pick up clothing. And so by doing this, creating a workflow that looks like this, where you have the output PNG in order to merge later on in Photoshop, and you have the select clothing option selected, I can create a workflow that processes both the inlay shot and the product shot, and then only need to merge these two later on manually in Photoshop. And so when I give this workflow a name right now, let's call it AXCD Ghost. I don't know why this is taking so long. The preview is already there. Now here we go. This is what the model outputs, right? It's a very granular cutout of only the product in this case. And so now let's say I wanted to have a few images like these retouched automatically to get so that I would only need to merge them manually later on. I could just go ahead, take a few ghost mannequin examples like this one and this one, for example. We'll drop them in here. They're again being uploaded, then they're processed by the algorithm, and then they will be made available to you for download. And once it's finished, which should be done in a few seconds, we can take a look at the output files. And while this processes, I will actually show you something that we're working on for the future. So like I said, right now, the system is able to give you both of these files, but you still have to manually merge them. So I'll download the results here, right? And now you see, all right, I have the product shot with the mannequin removed, and I do have the inlay shot, which is the one that I want merged into the product shot so that I would get a fully finished product image. Now, after this step, I still need to use Photoshop, but going forward, you won't even have to do that. So on our website, we already allow you to try this out, because we have a technology demo up here that goes into this effect in detail. We're starting with pants and we'll expand further. But the idea is that even the merging in Photoshop does not need to be done manually anymore. Instead, you can use the product shot, you can use an inlay shot, and the system will automatically produce the ghost mannequin shot for you. Now, this is what the final result will look like. And this is what I would have still needed to be doing manually by combining these two original shots with the background removed in Photoshop later on in the current world. And going forward, you'll be able to do this entirely automatically with us. You can actually try this. So it's a technology demo, and if you have pants shots like these available, just go to the website at Ghost Mannequin Effect Demo and then try it yourself. You don't have to use our examples, and you can try it to see whether it actually works for you already. We'll productize this in the coming months, and then it will become of the normal AutoRetouch application. But those were the use cases that I wanted to show you today in our master class that AutoRetouch can be used for. There are a few others like cropping faces or using AutoRetouch to change already manipulated images with certain settings like resolution or position of the model or background color very easily if you want to use these images in marketplaces, for example. All of those things are possible. Take a look at autoretouch.com, sign up, you can try it for free. And now I'll open it up for questions.